Everybody to the How Do I Support Learner Comprehension Remotely 15-minute webinar produced by CAST. Before we start, I just want to say in an analogy kind of way that I've practiced yoga for a really long time, and yet I still go to yoga classes sometimes. And why do I do that? Because when I go, sometimes I appreciate the teacher sort of reminding me what I already know, reminding me what I should pay attention to. Make sure you're extending through the spine. Make sure you have your feet planted firmly in the ground. And so this webinar is really not a course or class in how to support learner comprehension, because most of us have been teaching and supporting learner comprehension for a pretty long time. But it's a set of reminders. What do we have to pay attention to? And because of this changing context, the sudden shift from brick and mortar classrooms to the remote learning context, we hope that this 15-minute set of reminders is of use as you think about supporting learner comprehension. The bit.ly for the slides is there. It's bit.ly/remote comprehension, spelled out, capital R and capital C. I'm Susan, and I want to let my co-facilitator introduce himself, Bill Wilmot.
Hi, Bill Wilmot. I'm also an implementation specialist at CAST and have been working with teams in New Hampshire. And because it's April 1st, I wore my spring jacket, but because it's New England, I wore my turtleneck. So.
Great, thank you. So this webinar is organized the same way. We're going to go through 5 scenarios and do some brainstorming together. You can do that brainstorming by participating in the chat. Or Ari, does it work for folks to also put something in the Q&A, or would you rather it stay right in the chat?
Well, we can have multiple means to show,
Okay. So in the question and answer, just lots of answers, or in the chat. And then from each scenario, we'll move into what I'm going to just call design reminders. So here's the first scenario. I'll read it for anybody who is participating just through audio. So Mahir is a 10th grade student who has a visual impairment. He's taking geometry this year. When at school, his teacher uses a photocopier to enlarge images in the math textbook. Now Mahir is a remote learning student without access to those photocopies. The question that I'd love us to spend a little time on is, what thoughts and ideas might support Mahir's teacher? So the question is not so much about what does Mahir need, but what might support Mahir's teacher? What should Mahir's teacher pay attention to in the design of learning, and specifically around supporting his comprehension? You put your ideas in the chat or share them any other way. Bill, if you have anything to add.
My first thought is that if there is someone who is focused on accessible assistive technologies, to perhaps engage that person in thinking about how we can support Mahir. I know there are apps on phones that can magnify things, and maybe that's a possible technology that he could be using on either a tablet or a phone.
I'm reading that images can be magnified if there's technology. And then somebody asked, how does the content look to all students across devices, right? So sometimes what we learned from one student teaches us something about the accessibility of the content for many students. One of the things we like to say is what's necessary for one is often good for all. Consider accessibility. That's a really important design reminder, right? We have to just be thinking about, can kids perceive this learning material? And there are some resources linked here. The AIM Center, the Accessible Educational Materials Center, is a wonderful, incredible place to just navigate and spend some time, as well as 2 documents from that center about accessibility with documents and with presentations. Here's another one, Megan. Megan's third grade teacher, has sent home the novel Charlotte's Web as an all-class read. Each student received a copy of a paperback edition of the book via the U.S. mail. Megan loves stories, but she decodes slowly, so slowly sometimes that it interferes with her comprehension. What thoughts and ideas might you have for Megan's teacher? What does Megan's teacher need to maybe have a reminder about what to pay attention to? It's a great question. What supports can there be for decoding?
I saw a beautiful situation in a first and second grade classroom where students had access to videos using a QR code that pairs of students had read to each other. So a pair of students would read on video, would show the pictures, and then any student could access those via QR code. And thinking back on that now, I saw that almost a year ago. That's a situation where all of those videos could easily be translated into a remote context.
Absolutely. So many great ideas are coming through the chat. If comprehension is the goal over decoding, how could we have a read aloud that Megan could follow along with, like an audio version? And I love that focus on clarifying the goal. Audible now has some free stories. How do we create a visual experience of the book? Are there ways that students can read the book, quote unquote? Could she read aloud to all students, give students access to Bookshare? Why are we using Charlotte's Web? What is the goal, right? So all really great questions. And again, not answers or solutions or even strategies, but just points of focus for us to consider as we think about design, accessibility, and in this particular 15 minutes, comprehension. Here's some supports around everything you all just said, supporting decoding and fluency. I took this list of wonderful hyperlinked resources from the AIM Center website. So again, I can't overstate what a great place that would be to check out, but I'll let you navigate those sort of after the webinar is over. Here's another one. We have 5. This is the third one. John's a 6th grade student who was reading a series of articles about the solar system. His teacher taught his class lots of solar system vocabulary. In the classroom, all of the new words are on a bulletin board with images and definitions. Without that bulletin board, John is challenged by remembering what all of the words mean, and it sometimes interferes with his comprehension. What should John's teacher pay attention to?
It'd be interesting to set up a situation where other learners in the class could kind of crowdsource some of the definitions and create a shared document where they're adding images. The teacher has to be on top of that and kind of making sure that they all fit with that they're all accurate. I guess, but it would be a great way to get everybody involved in that, because that's going to be supportive of everybody's work.
I love that idea, and I love the fact that it also really builds community, right? So sometimes one of the ways that we increase accessibility, right, it does something else at the same time. Could learners create flashcards together? Jennifer's saying there's an online program for doing this. Can we provide an overview to build schema before we get into the details? How can the teacher link words with definitions, right? It's so easy to hyperlink things now in a Google Doc. How can we support vocabulary through virtual word walls or hyperdocs? I love that, virtual word walls, right? That's something, it's a form that students know, right? So if we say this is a word wall, it's just this way. They know how to use that and navigate that. Can he recreate it himself in his space with the parents' help, even word webs to connect them? Fantastic. So the attention that we're hoping John's teacher pays is to really defining and supporting John to understand language and symbols, right? Ideas that you said are just 2 of the ideas here. You had lots more. But that's another place when we're supporting comprehension, we have to bring our attention. How do we make sure that learners are not getting tripped up by words that no longer have definitions that are easy to find, or symbols, right? I just can't remember greater than and less than, and I used to have that place on the wall where I looked, but I'm not in that room anymore. So how do we bring our attention to that in our designs? Here's another one. Yin is a senior in high school who has recently moved to the United States. In her English class, she is reading a collection of American short stories. Sometimes she does not understand the references in the stories. When she was at school, she could ask a classmate to explain, but now she's learning at home. What thoughts and ideas might support Yin's teacher?
This one is really challenging. It's not, uh, and it's not just for students who have maybe moved to the US recently, but for all kinds of students who have background knowledge that may not fully support or don't have the background knowledge to fully support kind of the current content. I always feel like it's helpful to kind of investigate when you're doing a lesson. What is the background knowledge and maybe the cultural knowledge that is necessary to really kind of fully understand that, and find ways to make that accessible right in the new material that you're presenting. So immediate links out to kind of background or cultural knowledge to kind of understand the bigger picture of content.
Absolutely. And if we were to build that kind of background knowledge, it's very likely that Yin would not be the only student who benefited from that, right? Because there are kids who may not know those references for lots of other reasons. Um, Lots of good ideas are coming in. It'd be fun to link videos that help to build the background knowledge, annotated copies where she points out language that could be difficult. I love the ideas are coming as questions. Could she read a story about her home country? Right? Again, why are we reading? Are we picking this content because it's really important content, or just because it's the content we thought about when we thought about the goal? Um, how can background knowledge be created, activated? Great question. That's a perfect place for her teacher to be thinking. Let's see what else. What am I missing? Can we clarify the goal again? And maybe this can be achieved other ways. Great.
The other thing is that she has an excellent learner behavior that she already engages in, which is asking a classmate when she doesn't understand. What are other ways that we can support her to continue engaging in that very positive learning behavior?
Absolutely. And in the same way that a class-created glossary, right, might build community, taking this strategy away from her, right, might detract from her social relationships in some way. So being mindful that as we change things, we change more than the thing we're changing, and to be thinking about that. Let's see.
I'm very interested in this remote moment that we're living in, about the connection between my being in the same room and having a relationship with my teacher and my being in the same room and having a relationship with my peers, and how that affects engagement and my interest and my motivation and willingness to do whatever work that people are asking me to engage in. I feel like those relationships support engagement very deeply. And so that seems almost a starting place for thinking about this remote learning, is how are we supporting those relationships to support engagement, to support our learning goals.
I so agree. And I also think about kids that I've supported over the years who have labels of being on the autism spectrum. And that sometimes, right, for some learners, there's a deeper engagement when I don't have to manage this social community stuff right now. I get
Right.
to just do this math for a really long time. And I don't mean to imply in any way that kids with autism are all the same at all. Just that there's such variety and variability among the ways that learners engage. But absolutely, I think you're right. And we have so much to learn about from this time, from this crisis. So for that example that we just thought about, really the attention point for the teacher is to think about how am I going to build or activate background knowledge? Not so much like how am I going to do this for this student, but how am I going to do this in the design, right? Because again, it may be something that benefits multiple students for multiple reasons. We know that closed captioning is good for kids for lots of reasons, even for kids whose speakers are broken on their laptop devices. So how do we think about it as a design focus, not just a strategy? One more. Oops, make it the Emma. Emma is 8 years old and is mostly managing her remote learning assignments on her own. Though she can read, Emma cannot read everything that the teacher sends her, so sometimes she doesn't understand what she needs to do for the day. What thoughts and ideas might support Emma's teacher? Where should she bring her attention? And this is our last one. Yes, how else can a teacher express direction so that it isn't a reading task? Is there some other way, right? A video, a picture? Is there some other way that we can show an audio file? Right.
And we know in the classroom that it's so important to present directions in multiple through multiple means when you're in the classroom. That's probably even more important when you are remote. And that kind of seeing the teacher's face may be really important in this context of presenting directions.
I worked with a young student teacher one time, and he said to me when we were doing a reflective conversation, he said, "It just drives me crazy. Kids just ask me all day long, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" He goes, "So I just made a set of videos. Every single assignment I give, there's a video for how to do it." And he said, kids can watch them. I can send them home when people are absent. I give them to families when caregivers. So all of a sudden, this young teacher had devised this sort of predictable support, we like to call it, in the classroom, where if you don't know what to do, there's a video of the teacher explaining it.
And imagine after this is all over, we still have those videos, so we can now take them back to our classroom and just use them.
Absolutely, yes. I'm seeing one other comment. Can she use collaboration time to support this for all? Can she partner with another student or students to work together? All great ideas. And I'm aware of our time. Thanks, Ari. So the place of focus here is building multiple representations, right? Making sure that as a means of supporting learner comprehension, we're not just communicating in one modality, in one way. We will spend some time on the screen here for any questions or any answers that you want to share. But that is the end of our scenarios. Thanks for linking Vocaroo, great resource to create audio files, super easy to use. Yep. People are saying they love it. Someone said, I started making videos for this. It's amazing to see how many students use it. They've requested that I keep using it. Fantastic. Videos of instructions. So easy and free. I love the idea of thinking about one student to plan alternatives for all students. Yes, sometimes we think about accessibility and planning for variability, and then we meet a learner that we didn't think of. And that learner really is professional learning, right, for us right there in that moment, about how we need to expand our definition in that moment of accessibility and really build in different options than perhaps we've had. Jennifer's adding that, again, it's a really important time to think about goals. Yes, always returning to that question. What is the goal? What am I really trying to accomplish here? Am I having people read Charlotte's Web because I want students to understand something about friendship, and that's a deep theme in that novel? And if that's the case, are there many novels many novels, videos, articles, essays, all sorts of things, games that I could offer to students as a means of learning about friendship? Or is it that Charlotte's Web is something special about Charlotte's Web that is really the goal? Probably not. Getting feedback from students, especially ones that are not as active, is so important. They can tell us best about where they are not understanding. I'll just end with one quick story about that. I was working with some faculty at a college and talking about planning for learner variability and barriers in the design, and this chemistry professor said, I've been teaching this class for 30 years and I think it goes pretty well. And then I challenged him to give his class a survey about barriers in the course, because he was finding that learners were not doing the homework as much as he hoped. And he was fantastic, and he came back and he said, I didn't know it, The textbook is a huge barrier in this course, and the amount of reading that I assign at one time is a huge barrier in this course. So really listening to learners is such a great place to end. Um, Thank you all for joining us. Check back again. We have another webinar tomorrow. And best of luck with the work that you're doing. Take good care.